Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for your patience and good evening. Seeing that it is 6:04 and that we have a quorum, I'd like to call the Wilmington Wildwood Early Childhood Center School Building Committee meeting to order on this evening of January 25th, 2024. Again, a reminder for those members of our committee who are joining us, the meeting tonight is being recorded as well as live streamed through the partnership with WCTV. This recording will again be made available, as we've tried to do for all of our meetings, for any community members that wish to log on and join it who might not have been able to join us this evening. With all of that said, we'd first look to call to order, and Vivian, if you could help take us through that, please.
Sure. Paul Ruggiero.
Here.
Greg Bendel.
Here.
Kate Bissell.
Here.
Stacy Scott.
Here.
Christine Holloran.
Here.
Alice Brown Legrand. George Hooper. Susan Inman. Brian Perry. Paul Melorani. David Ragsdale.
Here.
Marianne Galezzo.
Here.
Michael Camasio. Camosio. Apologies. Thank you. Craig Miner.
Here.
Christine Pendergast.
Here.
Justin Cuso.
Here.
Glenn.
Here.
Myself. Absent is Diane Allen, John Holloway, Kevin Kyra, and the rest. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. The second order of business this evening is the approval of minutes from our last meeting. I know that they were extensive. As is always the case, we're looking for approval, and these minutes will be again compiled as part of the record. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Did you get that, Sarah?
Yeah, David Ragsdale seconded.
Okay, thank you. And again, Vivian, thanks if you could take us through.
Paul.
Yes.
Greg.
I'll abstain.
Kate.
Also abstain. I wasn't present for the entirety.
Stacy.
I abstain.
Christine.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Marianne.
Yeah. Abstain.
Michael.
Yes.
Craig. Craig.
Yes.
Christine Pendergast. Justin.
Yes.
Glenn.
Yes.
Myself, yes.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Third order business tonight is the approval of invoices. Julie,
We do not have any invoices to approve this evening. We approved them at the last meeting.
thank you. Okay, we pass over that. Okay, with that, item number 4, the heart of this meeting is things, of course, really ramping up with this project, with the work of Doran Whittier. And this evening, they're going to continue with their presentation of preliminary design options as they are required to do, as this project is required to take us through according to our commitment and partnership with the MSBA program. There is an awful lot of information to come. Myself and members of our leadership, the working group, if you will, have had a chance to go through this. We are certainly well aware of that, but it's important that we provide, with the help of obviously Doran Whittier, the opportunity to bring you up to speed as the building committee. There's an awful lot to think about with this project and the potential of school consolidation. And it's because of that there are an awful lot of options. Jason is going to take us through, as a committee, more of these options to consider. Just before he does, though, I just want to make one comment because I think it's important to frame this. I know that not every member of the group that's here tonight, or perhaps those that are watching, were tuned into our last or previous meetings. But as you'll see momentarily, one of the sites that they will profile and explore is the consideration of the current Wilmington Town Hall site. The context for that and providing them as our designer the sort of green light, if you will, to explore that was a couple-fold. First, based upon the conversations that this group had at our previous meeting, Wildwood School Building Committee meeting, there was a general sense, and Julie, I'll certainly, or anyone else ask you to follow up on this if you'd like, but there was a general sense from those of us in attendance that we felt like for this project, in order to be able to say that we've exercised due diligence, this is a site and the only other site that's known to this committee that could be available for construction for a new school building. And so to take it out of the mix or out of consideration for the possible new school seemed not to be alone within our charge, and again, something that we thought was part of due diligence. But the second important thing to convey is that, again, the notion that if there were other decisions that have been made, say at the town level, around the utilization of the town hall site, or a future use that site had already been identified for and plans were underway, then that would be certainly inappropriate for this project to explore that. Conversation with the temporary town manager indicated very clearly that there has been no decision around the future disposition of the town hall site. And so with that, it is one of the sites that, again, is emerging here as part of the due diligence with Doran Whittier to explore. So with all of that said, Jason, I'll turn it over to you, and the floor is yours to take us through, obviously, a lot of important and great information to come. So thanks.
Thanks, Glenn. Actually, Ronnie's going to get us started this evening.
Sorry. Thanks, Ron.
That's okay. Well, welcome everybody. So this is the agenda. I think many of you have this, but today we want to take you through the preliminary design options. We'll do an overview of the options that we presented 2 weeks ago, and to just show you some of the changes that have happened to those based on comments that we've heard. And then we'll take you through the remaining options that are on the list, and then from there look ahead to the next couple of steps for us in this phase. So I'll turn it over to Jason in just a minute, but these are the 3 configurations that we are looking at: pre-KK, pre-K3, and pre-K5. We have been looking at 3 sites, the Wildwood, Woburn Street, and North Intermediate sites. And on each of those, we are looking at a repair option, there are ad reno, and there are new options. And then based on the viability of some of the sites, we've realized that, for example, the pre-KK at the North Intermediate site would not necessarily make sense, because you would then have 2 buildings on one site. So that's why you see an X in some of the positions. But otherwise, we would be looking at a variety of options. And then at the bottom, you'll see that the town hall site no longer has a question mark, as Glenn has, Dr. Brand has taken us through that decision to add the town hall site onto this list. And so we will be looking at new configurations for each of the 3 grade configurations at the town hall site as well. And with that, we will remain objective. The order of any of the options that we are showing you are not that anyone has a preference. It's just kind of the process of subtraction, if you will. We tend to start with the biggest configuration, because that's actually the most challenging to fit on any of the sites, and working the site circulation and the amenities that are required on each of the sites, as well as fitting the building and meeting all of the educational goals as well. So we start with pre-K5 typically, and then we kind of work our way to the smaller grade configurations of pre-K3 and pre-KK.
Thanks, Ronnie. This next slide is just a reminder to everyone, sort of what scale of development are we talking about at this stage. If everyone remembers, this first submittal, what's called the preliminary design program submittal, is the process of not only defining the project, but exploring the widest range of options possible, and then ultimately narrowing that range of options to a few. We are not expected to select the single option that we're going to prefer at this stage, but instead we're sort of asking these basic questions. Can we accomplish both our educational and facility goals on each one of these sites? particularly as it relates to can it fit, right? We've got certain site features in each location that play an impact on whether or not an option could fit. And then finally, we're actively looking for feedback on how we can do it better. So part of what we're going to share tonight is the second iteration of some of the options that you saw last time, and then we'll continue with the options that you haven't seen yet as part of our presentation. So the second iteration of those previously presented concepts, first we heard quite a number of feedback, and just to remind everybody what those 4 options were, they were all related to pre-K 5, and again that had to do with they're the hardest things to fit because physically they're the largest in size. And so we looked at a new on the Wildwood site, a new on the Woburn Street site, and both an ad reno and a new on the North Intermediate site. So the second iteration of those first, here's what you saw last time for new pre-K 5 at the north site. Just to remind everyone, the large red triangle is the main entry. The small red triangle typically designates pre-K entry. I won't take the time to remind everybody about the site circulation from the previous iteration. But one of the bits of feedback that we got last time was to position the playground areas inside the emergency vehicle and bus loop rather than outside. So we've made that change graphically in this second iteration. In addition to that, there was some feedback from the educators that we needed to test on the 3rd floor. And for this particular concept, we were able to achieve those changes without significant changes to the conceptual geometry, the site plan, or the site circulation. So that's the second iteration of what we're calling pre-K 5 N1, new construction at the North Intermediate site. And like with our previous meetings, we encourage interaction and question from the committee along the way. So if you do have comments or questions about any of these updates, please use the raise your hand feature and someone will alert me and we can respond to your questions in real time. The next option that you saw last time is the ad reno for pre-K 5 at the North Intermediate site. If you'll recall, again, the front door is down here along Salem Street with the pre-K entry at the existing front door of the building. We were wrapping an addition around the core elements. That's what's in the hatched area in the illustration. Some of the feedback we heard resulted in some geometric changes to this. And so rather than being able to fit the classroom portions as an L along the existing building, in this second iteration, it was necessary that they become more independent of one another, more as a finger diagram rather than an L diagram. That geometric change had an impact on the site circulation. Still a 4-story building, still wrapping the addition around the core, but what you're seeing here is the removal of that parent loop and sort of secondary parking lot along the wetland boundary. We were able to replicate that parking by expanding the main parking lot to the north, but one impact of this move is that the parent drop-off queue, sort of here along Salem Street, is much shorter in this second iteration. So again, not a significant change to the concept of the building itself, but this second iteration did have an impact on the site features, and we wanted to share those with you. Yes, Mike, you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I was going to ask, as it relates to the parent loop and the bus drop-off, is there any reason it would not be flipped, particularly because the current school bus drop-off is that front area right now? Just curious.
Yes, of course. What we're trying to do with all of these concepts is to not design in enough flexibility that the district could operate things like vehicular circulation in more than one way. Because of the expanded population that we're talking about in these pre-K 5 concepts, we're actually trying to provide the longest queue length for buses because we're expecting something like 11, 12, 13 buses. And so in this case, we do have them shown going around the back because they would occupy so much linear length on the site. Ideally, we would have long queues for both sets of vehicles, but in this case, the parent queue, at least in this iteration of this option, is a little bit compromised. Okay.
Jason, quick question.
Yes,
Is there
Christine.
any reason why we couldn't put both queue lines in the rear instead of having that short line in the front?
You could certainly do that, and some districts have what they call double queuing, where buses, maybe are along the sidewalk, and then parents are essentially parallel parked next to those buses. Everything we sort of know about on-site vehicular circulation is that can present a safety concern, because now students are being required to travel through a lane of cars to get to the sidewalk. So it wouldn't be ideal. There may be a circumstance where perhaps we could modify this site concept. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but that parents would enter here and come along this edge of the building and either exit immediately or sort of circulate back out. When we tested that, it's not all that much longer than what's being shown in this illustration. So if this were to move forward, I think what the design team would do is make an effort to take a look at that parent queue area specifically and see if there are geometric strategies where we could lengthen that.
So just to paraphrase, what we achieved by making this iteration was just reducing what looked like extra hallway space. Is that correct?
Correct. This is a little more compact design than what we had before. And there were some adjacencies that we needed to take care of on the upper floors that resulted in the need to change the geometry of the fingers themselves.
Is it possible for us to retain the first iteration concept and be flexible enough going forward such that we know that we liked the queuing concept in the first iteration? And could we maintain that flexibility and keep in mind we'd like to reduce extra space wherever possible?
Understood. Yes, that's always a possibility. And for those options that make the short list, and we will be required to have at least one add renovation option in that mix, it's certainly reasonable to do the exploration that you're describing. Could we orient one of the fingers to be sort of north-south and change the shape of the parking lot so that we could get a second vehicle loop that's separate somewhere else on the site?
Okay.
So yes, we'll certainly take that feedback, and if this makes it into the next round of options, to do that. Thank you for that, Christine. Okay, this is also pre-K 5, but we've now switched sites. We are now at the Woburn Street site. This is the first iteration, and the two key bits of feedback that we received on this were related to overlapping the existing building and trying to find places for additional parking. So in the second iteration, you can see that we were able to slip in some additional parking and sort of hit that bare minimum of 140 parking spaces for this grade configuration. But in looking at the position of the new building, we were not able to sneak this far enough north to get off of the existing building. There may still be an opportunity to continue to explore that again if this option gets into the next step. What you will see in an option that you haven't seen yet is that for the pre-K 3 grade configuration, we took that same note and attempted to get that concept completely off of the existing building. And so in that case, we'll show in just a few minutes, we were able to achieve that particular goal. And then finally, that first round of options that we shared, we've moved over to the Wildwood site. And what you're seeing in this first iteration was that the site was incredibly tight to try to achieve all of the site features. So in our second iteration, we've looked at two things. One, we have actually tried to compress the footprint of the concept to give us a little more wiggle room with the site features. But the main thing that we've done is we've looked at what it would take to put a septic system on this site for this population. So in several of the upcoming diagrams, what you'll see are these sort of green, light green squares with the gray lines in them. Those are representing both the primary leaching field and the secondary leaching field. And yes, they can be changed in their geometry slightly to be longer and skinnier, but this represents sort of the total site area that these require. So for us, I think what overlaying those requirements on the Wildwood site demonstrated, particularly for this population, is that it just makes it even harder to get all of the requirements on this particular site. We still have extensive retaining wall all on two of the four sides of the property to get all of these features sort of on the same elevation as the building. Yeah, Ronnie, go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you. I also wanted to point out that the leach field areas are in the wellhead protection zone. As you could see, it's, and Jason, maybe you could point out where that swatch of color is. And so then it would require some additional treatment when it's located in that area. You know, if this were an option that we would move forward with, we would try to rework the site to move some of the septic area and leach field areas outside of the wellhead protection zone. But in the essence of time, we're just showing that it does fit on site. It might need to get reconfigured, but that is something under consideration as we look at some of these options.
Great, thank you for that, Ronnie. So now moving on, we had quite a few remaining concepts to still cover with you. We'll do our best to be brief here. You see that the options indicated in the bold black lettering are what we're going to go over in the next part of the presentation. We're going to start at the town hall site, and Ronnie, maybe I can ask you to talk about the existing conditions there.
Sure. So this is the largest of the sites at 19 acres. It's centrally located in town in an R20 residential district, similar to the other three sites that we've looked at previously. So the setbacks are all similar. There's minimal grade change at this site. And then to the northwest is a wetlands area. And so there is a buffer zone associated with that. And we are trying to get some better clarification on some of the other constraints that are potentially on this site, such as Article 97 and it being, you know, a protected site right now.
Ronnie, related to that, could you just briefly explain what Article 97 is?
Sure. Article 97 is a designation where the legislature protects the land. And so it would have to be voted by the legislature for it to be used for another purpose. In that sense, it impacts this project in that it can take a couple of extra months, several extra months potentially, if that designation in fact applies to the site. It definitely applies to the adjacent property where the wetlands are, and the way that the lines are drawn, it looks like it overlaps onto the site, so therefore it would impact the site, and we're just trying to obtain some further clarification on whether or not it in fact will impact the site.
Ronnie, can I jump in here for a minute?
Sure.
So the fields on this site are actually town designated inventory and restricted use according to our 2021 open space plan. So I actually think the site is probably a no-go just for that purpose. We can't touch the fields. It is recreational and it's restricted.
But
So if so I was going to say, if this site were to be selected, because the other three sites potentially would become available, there could be a land swap. These are all kind of different avenues to explore, and it could potentially be a reason to not pursue this site any further, or it could be a reason to look at it being that it is the largest and that the fields could potentially be replicated at one of the other three sites, depending on which grade configuration is selected.
I see two other hands. I'm not sure who came first, but Mr. Bendel, if you want to go first, and then I think Vivian, your hand was up as well.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I think Vivian's hand was up before mine, so I'll. for a second.
That's quite all right. Go right ahead, Greg. I lowered my hand because Ronnie answered it already.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So I just want to chime in on this. I was in the majority of folks who weren't able to be at the last meeting, but as it relates to the town hall, most will recall that this was seriously considered for the senior center project location, but it was, I believe it was actually November of 2021. We heard overwhelming feedback from the community that this is not where they wanted to build a project. And so we turned directions to not too far away from there. But it was amazing how much feedback we got. Obviously, we all value the ball fields and the playground space and the area down there. But it was really a resounding no that they didn't want that built there for a number of reasons. I also wanted to note, as it relates to the Article 97, a lot of us who have been in pursuit of a substation in North Wilmington are familiar that we've looked at a number of sites that would require Article 97, and we have been well versed on the challenges that will present to try to get 2/3 of the legislature to vote in favor for a Wilmington project. So that's something that we're familiar with. So I have hesitations about this site. I know that there are other committees, such as the Rink Committee, that are very interested in this location. So I just wanted to add that dating back to as far as November of 2021, we had about a 4-hour meeting where we were told absolutely not. We're not going to build at that site. So I just wanted to offer that as some context. Thank you.
Thanks. Vivian?
Mr. Bendel, if you wouldn't mind elaborating, was that they didn't want a senior center built on this site or any project built on this site?
Yeah, thank you. I think it was a mixture of both. If I be completely honest, my assessment of it was a little bit of both. That they preferred a different location, and that there were another group of people who were really adamant that we not, overdo that area. As Ms. Galeazzo mentioned earlier, that came up about it being protected under the Open Space Committee's research there, and so. There were a number of reasons, and both of those, I think, were in play at that point.
Just briefly too, when the Rink Committee's been looking at this, we're not going to encroach on the fields at all. It'll be kind of part of the plan is to have the fields stay as recreation because they're, of course, restricted. It's all we can use them for. And then maybe build the rink where the old town hall is. It's a little insight in what the Rink Committee is looking at.
Well, if I can jump in, and I think maybe this certainly is the information that you've shared or presented here. I don't know that anyone in this committee was a part of those conversations directly. I might be wrong with that, except Ms. Galeazzo, Mr. Bendel, you certainly the two of you were. If that is a position, I think, of the town, then clearly that would change. And Julie, as our OPM on this project, please help me out and weigh in on this. If that were indeed the position officially of the town, then that certainly would change this site location as part of the exploration, and certainly arguably change the direction. Again, we, in the absence of sort of this information specifically from our last discussion, I think I can speak for most of the folks around the table of the feeling of, look, there's a lot of things to consider with these possible proposals. And we also know or have a sense that there's a reuse committee, land reuse, or I'm gonna forget the exact title, that may be at some point coming into play at the town level. And certainly that could play into or factor into ultimately what site's chosen, depending on the site costs and so on. But Julie, you do this work all the time for profession. I don't. Help me out here in navigating this and how we go forward.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate the feedback from Marianne and from Greg. As a committee last meeting, we presented options on Wildwood, North Intermediate and Woburn Street. And the conversation came to town hall. There was no actual presentation on the town hall site, but we had kind of left it up with a question mark. And as we proceeded through that meeting, we asked Susan Inman and Dennis Kelly if they knew whether or not there was a committee created for land reuse for town hall site. And at that time, no committee had been created. So the committee, the building committee, voted as a group to consider this as an option due to the fact the size of the land. So as a committee, we've asked Doran Whittier to continue to move forward to as an option along with the other 3 sites. If there is a land use or reuse committee formed, we'd be happy to hear from them. The concern, though, is that in this small group of 20-something people, we're taking a look at this and we're saying, okay, we were looking at it for a rink, or, the access to this area is very congested. It's a very narrow road. And so we heard all of those, but our concern was what happens if the community as a whole comes back to us as a group and says, why didn't you explore this as an option? And so we felt that we needed to do our due diligence on this. There's a lot of constraints on this site, but we felt that we'd be remiss and we'd have to answer questions from the community that could, prevent us from giving them, an accurate response. So that is why we asked Doran Whittier to move forward with reviewing this site. If at some point it does come up that the town is not interested, we need to hear that from senior leadership and have them tell us to remove this from our focus.
Mr. Bendel, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. And Julie, thank you for that. I hope that I won't be misunderstood here. I can appreciate a third of the committee considering this and doing their due diligence. I have no problem with that. And I agree, we should look at all options, and I can appreciate that. I really do. But obviously, I just think that going forward, I think that there will need to be much more conversation before we would arrive at any location, obviously. And as it relates to the reuse committee, I want to just briefly mention that we did discuss that this past week. I don't think that it'll be formed in the very near future, probably not in time for this committee to have a recommendation from them. And so we're still kind of at infancy of developing that committee and what it's going to look like, what it's going to be named. I referred to it as the demolition committee, which didn't go over very well, but I was just trying to be honest. So I think that's a ways off. I just wanted to offer that too for context.
No, I appreciate that. I think that as you see the rest of this presentation unfold, you'll understand that there are some areas that people are adamant that it's like specifically the town hall site, that trying to get there, the roads are very narrow. So once Doran Whittier finishes their presentation, they'll give you an idea of how we are going to rate each individual option moving forward. And obviously those things will play into it. So as a committee, I understand that everyone is extremely busy, but I would recommend that you attend the meetings coming up in the next couple of months, because we will be rating these so that we can move certain ones forward. And if this site is one that people, after a review of it, even though it's the largest site, it may have the most amount of constraints, and therefore it would be removed from our options. Attending and working through the rating system with us will help us to move past this.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, just one final thought, very briefly, I promise, was that part of the reason that the senior center was chosen at that location on Main Street was the proximity to this very location, and that in theory, that a senior could, very easily cross the road and perhaps, see a grandchild participating in a ball game or some type of recreation where those two were so close in proximity. I think that was a big draw for the folks who voted for the 38 location where we know the senior center is being built. So I wanted to offer that as well.
Thanks, Mr. Bendel.
So just to follow up, Julie, to your point, I mean, do we put this site on hold until we get a legal opinion if we can even build on it at this point? I just hate to put it in the mix and we do our due diligence and Dawn Whittier does more work. And we find out that we can't touch the field, which makes this site unusable.
So I think we're at a very preliminary stage right now, and just seeing, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're literally taking the buildings that Dawn Whittier has given, rough designs for, and seeing if they fit on the site. And then all of the amenities that go along with it are, does it have town water? Does it have town sewer? Does it have gas? Are the roads, are there one or more egresses? Things like that. Those is what we're going to shake out later. I do agree that there may be some challenges regarding land swap, Article 97, whatever it is, but we're not at that point yet where that could prohibit us from moving forward. This literally is, do the buildings fit on these sites? And as you just saw, the Wildwood site, a pre-K to 5, does it fit? It does. Is it congested? Yeah. Is there room for kids to play ball and, circulation and 2 leaching fields? Yeah. So I think once Dawn Whittier finishes and we start to shake out, what we like, what we don't like, eventually you're going to get to your one preferred option.
Yeah, it might be helpful, Julie, if we just add some notes about process here. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, we're in the moment of the process where all we're doing is exploring the widest range of options possible. And our intention would be, even at the upcoming public forum, to invite the community to respond to prompts like, how strongly should the town consider putting a school project on the town hall site? And so we'll be soliciting feedback from them as early as the next public forum. We are also going to continue to do our due diligence on the technical constraints. And if it turns out that this isn't desirable, there isn't anything in the MSBA process that says we can't eliminate this from further consideration at this first step, right? To sort of eliminate it from consideration sort of right this minute or based on anecdotal information before we've talked to the community about it, is what the school building committee in our last meeting thought would be a misstep. So we're simply doing our due diligence, as Julie says, testing to see what fits. We'll run it through the evaluations process. And then if it doesn't make the short list, that's okay. That's how how these things go sometimes. No one from the design team or the OPM team is advocating that this is the right solution. We're simply testing what can and can't fit and what the various constraints are.
Thanks, Jason. Vivian, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I would definitely strongly advise that we keep it in for the time being, given the fact that many of the school building committee members, as well as the public in general, are not privy to some of the conversations, and as well as maybe not as well in tuned with the Article 97 legislative requirements, as well as what this site is designated for. I think we should keep it in the mix and and it might be that after the first iteration, this becomes more highlighted as red as a no-go because of all of those items and outline them. At least this way, it does give a clear sense to the community that we reviewed it, we did our due diligence, we did our homework, and as a result, we're voting for it to be no.
Thank you for the questions. Jason, I think I think this, or was this Ronnie still? Were you finishing up or are you on?
Yeah, Ronnie, if maybe you can just finish up the buildable area here.
Yeah. So based on the site constraints that we know of, there's no wetlands buffer directly on the site except for the southwest corner. And, you know, there's no other kind of constraints. So pretty much almost the entire site is considered buildable area. I know we have a wooded area to the north and the fields, obviously, but technically, as of right now, for our purposes, this entire site is a buildable area.
Thank you for that, Ronnie. So this first concept on the town hall site is a all new construction, pre-K 5 grade configuration. Again, graphically, the large red triangle is the main entry. The small red triangle is a pre-K entry. In this case, the dashed circle represents a demolished existing town hall. And I think everybody is oriented already, but Glen Road is out here to the left of the drawing. Everyone is aware that access to this site is constrained. What's being shown in this illustration is both parent vehicles and buses entering from Glen Road. Parents would immediately make a left-hand turn and circulate around the back of the building and load and unload students what is essentially along the cafeteria. They would then continue up around and then exit back out the way they came. Buses, by contrast, instead of turning left, would continue straight through what is the main faculty parking lot. There's this bus turnaround, and buses would queue along the entire face of the front of the concept, and then exit back out the way they came. In terms of the other site features, just inside the front door and sort of between the four sets of arms is the core elements. Just to remind everyone, orange is gymnasium, green is cafeteria, this teal color is administration and guidance, red is art and music. But we have the core elements in the middle, and then we have the academic areas, the classroom areas, the grade level teams, flanking that on either side. As a diagram on the site, this much more closely resembles what came out of visioning, this sort of butterfly model or barbell model, where we've got lower grades on one side, upper grades on the other side, and core elements in the middle. The other sites we've explored so far didn't allow that, but this particular site did allow that. So we've got some outdoor learning and lower grade play areas associated with their two fingers, and we've got some outdoor learning and play areas associated with the upper grades on the north end of the site. In addition to those features, just diagrammatically, what we've shown is an additional parking area, some perhaps pickleball courts, and then this light green rectangle represents the size of a competition football field, to give you just a sense, not that we're proposing a football field in that location, but just to give you a sense of how big that wooded area is on the northernmost end of the site. The last thing we'll mention about this particular site is that it is essentially a one-way in, one-way out site, but there is a road that dies into the site with potential access through the neighborhood. In this diagram, we're not showing that that's access for buses or for parents, but simply a gated paved moment where perhaps emergency vehicles could access the site for safety and security purposes if that were to be necessary. It is a two-story option. I'll show the enlarged floor plans in just a moment, but in these small thumbnails, what you'll see is that 3 of the 4 academic areas are 2 stories, and in fact, one of the academic areas is only 1 story. Here's the first floor plan, and again, just to quickly orient you, the front door is here. This is administration and nurse. We have pre-K in this finger. We have kindergarten in this finger. We have 3rd grade and 4th grade in these fingers. And then you can see sort of kitchen, cafeteria, back of house. On the 2nd floor, it's assumed to be 1st and 2nd grade, so that the lower grades are connected vertically. And then we have 5th grade up above, and then they're connected by some more core elements, the library, STEM program, health classroom on the 2nd floor. Just pause there quickly. Are there any? I can only see about a dozen participants? Any hands, Glenn or Ronnie?
No, I don't see him.
Okay, perfect. Then moving on to another option that you haven't seen yet. This is also pre-K 5. This is another addition renovation concept, this time at the Woburn Street property. Again, just to orient everyone, High Street is here on the right-hand edge, of the property line. The site slopes from high along High Street and low along the western property line. So we've got topography to manage here. In this concept, what you're seeing in this building footprint is we're saving all of the existing building with the exception of the existing cafeteria and kitchen at the very southern end of the building. Then we're putting a major addition out to the west of that existing building, a 3-story addition. In terms of site circulation, in this case, buses would enter here to the south. They would come down the hill and they would load and unload along the back of the building where the classroom areas are. They would use this hardscape play area as their turnaround, and then they would exit back out the way they came. Parent vehicles would enter the site here along High Street, queue along the front of the building, and then similarly exit out the southern end of the site. Because of the topography, like we saw in some other Woburn Street sites, there would likely be extensive retaining walls necessary to make a concept like this work. And so, for example, this faculty parking lot to the north and this faculty parking lot more to the west are separated by a whole level. So this delivery zone is actually down at the lowest level, and you've got the retaining wall and the parking lot is up at the higher level. The courtyards themselves and the leaching fields that you're seeing in this diagram, again, are down at the lower level where the building itself and some new retaining wall are managing that change in elevation. In terms of the floor plans themselves, this is the lowest level. We've got pre-K and kindergarten on the lowest level. And if you remember, the buses are loading and unloading out here along the western edge. Under the existing building, in that lowest level of the existing building, we've got the mechanical plant and custodial maintenance areas, and the one daylit classroom in that lower level space in this diagram is a health classroom. We've got the gymnasium, and then what is the existing mechanical plant could potentially get converted to a storage space. On the main level, again, just to orient you, here's the front door here at this vestibule. We've got administration and guidance and nurse near the front door. Essentially, we have all of the public elements with the exception of the gym in the existing building. So we would be, this diagram is showing repurposing the existing gymnasium as cafeteria. The kitchen would be partly in the existing building and partly in a new addition, stage in the new addition. And then we've got grades 1 and 2 above pre-K and K on this main level in the academic portions. And then finally on the 3rd floor, we've got some classrooms being converted to the library media center. We've got the STEM classroom, some ELL spaces, art and OT-PT suite on that upper level. And then we've got grades 3, 4, and 5 all on this 3rd floor, where the this one grade level grouping is the connector back to the 3rd floor of the existing building. So we've got sort of this racetrack circulation in this concept.
Sorry, Jason, which level was the gym on?
It's on the lowest level.
Lowest, okay.
It's on the lowest level.
So we talked in the last meeting about the challenges of multi-floor concepts with like kind of odd configurations related to security responses and whatnot. Do you see any security issues with this layout? Are we good? Any drawbacks we should consider?
I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for in terms of security risks. We didn't diagram the separation of public and private for tonight's meeting, but the security threshold would exist right here, so that folks couldn't get to the academic wings. And on the lowest level, that same security threshold would exist sort of right here. So yes, you could get down the stairs to the gym, and the gym can exit out to the courtyard, but in an after hours event, no one would have access to the academic areas. And that's true on the third floor. Also, there would be a security threshold here and a security threshold there. So from that point of view, even what looks like complicated geometry for a concept like this could still achieve that separation of public and private. What's a little more difficult from an emergency vehicle perspective, anytime you're changing elevations, can you have, undesirable activities happening at the lowest level if you can't observe them from the upper level? Cruisers, for example, may have to, circulate through the site every now and again to do a security sweep. We can't make the whole site flat in this case. So some of those inherent challenges are associated with the topography itself.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and if you could, what's the approximate distance that would be on the west side of this illustration from the farthest end to the farthest end?
Are you asking from this end
Yeah.
to this end?
Yeah.
I don't have that measurement, but I could estimate. So this length right here is roughly 210 feet. So the whole thing is approximately 425 feet-ish.
Okay. Thank you.
Julie, you want to add some commentary?
I just wanted to clarify, this being an addition renovation, the building could not be occupied. The existing building could not be occupied while this addition renovation was going on, correct?
I don't think that's correct, actually.
Okay.
So in this case, what the construction phasing would be is we would leave the entirety of the existing building intact. We would build all of the addition. Right? Yes, it would be up against the existing building, and we'd have to work carefully through all of the site logistics, site laydown, what parts of the site are going to get lost during construction for use. But you build the entire addition first, and then because it's only grades 1, 2, and 3 here currently, that new addition is more than large enough to accommodate that entire population. So essentially you move into the addition, you vacate all of the existing building, and then you renovate the existing building. The sort of one exception to that sequence is the new mechanical plant, which is in the existing building. But in this case, because the concept has a new mechanical plant in a different location than the previous mechanical plant, that gets a little easier. Right? The existing mechanical plant could remain up and running while we're outfitting a new mechanical plant for the addition. It's not ideal for sure, but from a phased occupied construction perspective, it could be done.
Okay.
Other questions about this pre-K 5 addition renovation? Craig?
And this, just to be clear, this eliminates the fields on the west side of the site, correct? And I think there's tennis courts existing.
It
north.
does. It does. To position this large a population on this site would certainly result in the loss of the fields. There may be a handful of pockets where we could position some other features like tennis courts, but because of the leaching field requirements and the parking requirements, having sort of a large open green area, at least in this concept, is unlikely.
And if I can just add to that, and thank you, Craig, for that question. For those that are not just on the committee, but more, I guess, importantly, for those that are viewing this at home at some point, this will certainly have to all be part of the calculation and consideration at the town level around site reuse. Mr. Bendel, that committee that you were talking about earlier, as this as the particular option comes into the mix, for those watching, just keeping in mind here that what we're talking about is a pre-K to 5 school. And so should this be an option that emerges, of course, what would be left vacant as vacant sites, maybe with some demolition, Mr. Bennett, as you said, is, obviously the 2 schools that are being vacated. And so those 2 spaces could, should the community and the town decide to pursue that, look to expand field space, for example, to replace the spaces, the field space that may be lost on this site. So obviously, as this gets further down the line, all this starts to take shape, and it will be important, for the community at large to be thinking broadly about the intersections with this project and what's left behind in terms of other vacated sites.
Right. So the next concept that we're going to share is, again, pre-K 5 addition renovation at the Wildwood site. And this is very similar to what we've seen here already, where this is a 3-story concept. In this case, the diagram illustrates saving the portion of the existing building that fronts Wildwood Street and demolishing the other leg of the L, and then putting all new construction off to the northeast. Again, the red arrow is the front door. The small red arrow is a secondary entrance. So in this case, parent vehicles would enter the site from the north, and they would make a right-hand turn, circulate through the parking lot, and then load and unload along the front of the building, and then exit back out to Wildwood. Buses would circumnavigate the building, and they would load and unload along this edge. Obviously, the hardest part about this is getting the leaching fields onto the property. You can see all 4 of them are along this edge under the parking lot, which is not necessarily ideal. So again, right, an awful lot of features to try to put into this particular concept. When we look internal, you see that in the existing building, this hatched area, art and music spaces, main administration, nurse's office, some of the CARES program spaces, and then the core elements are essentially to the front of the concept, and the academic elements are essentially to the back of the concept. So in this case, we have pre-K and K on the first floor. We have first and second grade on the second floor with the library STE space in sort of this northwest corner. And then we've got 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, similar to other concepts where we've got them sort of over the gym and cafeteria, in this case, on the 3rd floor. Any questions about those pre-K 5 concepts? We'll move on to the pre-K 3. This is just an illustration to remind everyone that we came out of visioning and that there was a universal agreement, particularly about where 1st grade goes. So in this diagram, 1st grade is shown with kindergarten and pre-kindergarten, with the understanding that, in fact, depending on the concept, it may want to be over with 2nd and 3rd grade. But again, with the core elements as close to everyone as possible, rather than forcing some grade level groupings into long walking distances to those elements. So if you remember back to our matrix illustration of all of the options, right, we're not exploring all new pre-K 3 on the North Intermediate site, because that would result in 2 freestanding buildings on that property. So the first place we're looking at all new pre-K 3 is at the Wildwood, not Wildwood, at the Woburn Street site. And so in this illustration, this is the one that I had mentioned earlier, where we've heard the feedback about staying off of the existing building. And so we've changed the geometry of this concept to be skinnier to allow that to happen. It also helps that the gymnasium in this grade configuration is the smaller of the 2 gyms we're exploring, not the high school size gym. So again, how this site works, you see the existing building in dashed there, the new concept all free and clear of that to the north. Parent vehicles would enter this southern curb cut, make the right-hand turn, circulate through the main faculty parking lot, load and unload at the front door, then they would return and exit out the way they came. Pre-K and K parents, there's an option here for them to continue down the hill and have their own loading and unloading zone with their own entry on the lowest level. They would then circulate back out the way they came. Buses in this case also would enter here, but they would continue all the way around the building and load along the sort of cafeteria administration zone in this northeasternmost corner, and then they would exit out to High Street. In this case, we're showing the leaching fields at the lower level. Again, significant regrading would be necessary here, and as you're seeing in these heavy black lines, retaining walls to help manage the topography here. This main parking lot is at the higher elevation. This lower loop and this lower parking lot are at the lower elevation. Because it's pre-K 3, it is a 2-story concept rather than a 3-story concept. And because we have the elevation change in the topography from High Street and Woburn Street, this would present as a 1-story building. So if we look at the individual floor plans, this is the lowest level. And again, we've got pre-K and K down here. There's a couple of dashed lines that warrant some explanation. Because it's only 2 floors and we have to get grades 1, 2, and 3 together on that main level, they are above the bus loop, right? Essentially creating a covered hardscape play area. And that's what you're seeing in this first set of dashed lines out here to the left. That's representing classrooms that are actually above us. Similarly, the library is between the 2 fingers in this case. And again, 1 story up. And creates a covered, almost like a covered porch condition in this concept. The hill is this edge right here on the right-hand side of occupied space, and the remainder of it is under the building, but in this case, it's not hovering above us, it's actually dirt below the main part of the building. And then on the main level, again, here's the front door. We've got the gym, stage, cafeteria arrangement, kitchen, and other back of house spaces to the north. And then, as I mentioned, we've got grades 1, 2, and 3 in sort of that donut, that donut circulation pattern on this main level, with the library STEM classroom completing the core elements right here in the middle of the building. The next one is an ad reno for pre-K 3. This is very similar to the ad reno that we just saw for pre-K 5, same sort of siting strategy. Again, the difference is that we've pushed the academic portions down 1 story. So instead of having this element connect to the 3rd floor, it connects across to the 2nd floor. Site circulation works very similar. Parent vehicles are entering here. Bus vehicles are entering, circulating around under the hardscape area, and then coming back out. We have the high parking lot and the low parking lot.
So the build on Woburn Street, new versus ad reno is better, easier, because it's completely new. You're not dependent upon the existing building, correct?
Right, you're talking about this concept. Yes,
Yeah.
this is an all new building, free and clear of the existing building. In terms of construction sequencing, students would stay in the existing building here. We would build the entire building in 1 step. We would move in, then we would knock down the existing building and complete the site work.
Okay.
Where in this concept, just like the pre-K 5 version of this, we would need to leave the existing building intact with students in it, sort of build west of it and touching it with the new addition, move students into that, and then renovate the existing building before everybody could move over. So there's more steps and likely longer construction duration to achieve an ad reno here than all new construction. Great questions. Okay, Moving on to the Wildwood site, pre-K 3,
Jason,
Ad
just you
Reno.
on, sorry,
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
Susan,
Susan.
you had your hand?
Sorry, I just had one thing to say. I was gonna just say, I really like the second drop off of that new construction on the Woburn Street school. That's something that's unique to this property, right? The
It
second drop off.
it is. We actually were able to achieve a similar idea over at the town hall site. But yes, this is not present at the North Intermediate site in the current iteration of those concepts.
It seems like this separates the bus route nicely and leaves them an exit without going back to interfere with more traffic as well. And I thought that was a plus.
Okay, good feedback. We appreciate that.
Could you fit it in at the north, having the separate drop off, or you can on that site?
We could certainly look at that. Having a separate designated drop off area for just pre-K and K was not something that came out of the visioning effort. It is something that we have seen and are executing in other projects. So if that's feedback for us in our next round of iterations, we could certainly attempt to achieve that even over at the north property.
Yeah, I'd like to see it, to see what it would look like and if you could fit it.
Certainly there's a lot of benefits to the idea that if particularly the pre-K children who tend to have a difficult time transitioning from the car to the building, if the parents could park, have a short walk to their own entry, and then developmentally we're seeing some projects consider a transition zone sort of immediately inside that set of doors where parents could sit with them for a minute, or they could manage that transition in a better way. So certainly we could explore that even over at the north side if that's the desire. Okay, so we were over at the Wildwood site for pre-K 3 Ad Reno. Again, right, we're using the portion of the existing building that faces Wildwood. In this case, there are fewer elements in that existing building, and we would need to look at how we could better utilize that part of the building. It happens to be almost too narrow to get classrooms at the MSBA size in that existing building, which is why it only has, in this case, the custodial sort of back of house elements, the administration and the nurse in it. And then we've got the core elements, the gym, stage, cafeteria, art, music on one side, and then we've got the academic elements in the back. Because it's pre-K 3, it is in this concept a 2-story exploration rather than a 3-story exploration. Here's just those blow-ups. Again, we've got pre-K and K on the first floor, and then we have 1, 2, and 3 on the second floor with the library, STEM, and health classroom. Similar, but slightly different geometry. This is new pre-K 3 at Wildwood. In this case, the whole concept has been pulled back away from the street, but it's that same vehicular move of parent vehicles entering the site, circulating around, dropping off at the front, buses circulating around the back. In this case, what we explored was, instead of having buses load and unload along the southern edge, in this case, we've got sidewalk depicted so the buses can unload around this corner and enter through the academic areas closest to classrooms. Leaching fields you see here depicted again to the northeast, and extensive retaining wall necessary essentially to flatten out the site to get everything as reasonably level as possible. Still a 2-story concept. In terms of the layout, internal things have moved around from the Ad Reno scenario. We've got admin and guidance in the main entry. Over here in what is the westernmost corner, we've got the cafeteria on the front of the building, kitchen and back of house elements on the south edge, gym in the middle of the building in this case, and then we've got, again, pre-K and K with a courtyard. And in order to get everything to fit, we've deployed that same strategy where one of the grade levels on the second floor is up in the air, covering the hardscape play area so that these can be connected in one grade level experience for grades 1, 2, and 3 on the second floor. And then finally, pre-K 3 over at the town hall site. Similar siting strategy, and since you asked the question about pre-K parking, there is an opportunity that this parking lot here could be moved a little closer to the building. We have it here to get the playgrounds, the lower level playgrounds, sort of inside the loop, but could conceivably be moved a little closer and be designated a pre-K parking lot. Parents could park here and safely walk their children to either the K wing or the pre-K wing, because that's what is closest to them. Again, just to remind parents, circulate around the back of the building and exit back out to Glen Road. Buses circulate along the front of the building. The biggest difference between this concept and what we saw for pre-K 5 is that rather than most of the fingers be 2-story, in this case, because we have 2 fewer grades, most of the fingers are 1-story and only one of the wings is 2 stories. In fact, a bit of feedback that we heard from the educators when they first saw this concept late last week was, is there a way on this site to make this all 1-story so that no one is isolated on the second floor? So again, if we were to, if this were to advance into the short list, we would look at, for example, trying to connect and create an enclosed courtyard with that third grade level team to bring it off of the second floor. So when we look at those floor plans, again, pre-KK here, in this case, 1 and 2 on the ground on the other side of the building with the similar core elements between. And upstairs, we have the library, health, and STEM spaces, but they don't connect to anything because the entirety of that other portion of the building is a single story, with perhaps third grade being the only thing up here on the second floor. Any other questions about those pre-K 3 scenarios? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for being patient. We know there's a lot of these. We're nearly done with the options. So now finally moving down to pre-K K. This is new pre-K K on the Wildwood site. Obviously, much smaller population, a little more wiggle room here. So what you're seeing is the existing buildings being demolished. We have a 1-story concept. In this case, parent vehicles are entering from this side, circulating along the front of the building and exiting out. We've got buses again circulating around. There is an opportunity here in what's being shown in this diagram that pre-K students could load and unload along this edge and circulate around through this parking lot and go back out. So there's again a similar attitude to what we just saw over at Town Hall. This concept does have an enclosed courtyard. The stage abuts that along with art and music. And if we were to look at that, pre-K and K, excuse me, pre-K is on one side, K is on the other side. I'll just mention a bit of feedback that again that we got from the educators that we haven't had time to articulate in another iteration of this was related to the cafeteria. In the overall building diagram that came out of visioning, there were actually 2 dining spaces, one each associated with each grade level. But the educators suggested that perhaps that wasn't necessary, that if this concept had a more centralized cafeteria experience, that would be preferred. So that's something that, again, if this makes it into the short list of options that we would be looking to articulate. And then I believe this is the last. I believe this is the last one. Oh no, we got one more after this. This is pre-K K add reno at the Wildwood site, and again we're saving that same element. This case we've got some storage elements in the CARES program, kitchen and back of house in the existing building. Pre-K in a K in a new addition with a similar configuration to that we just saw. One of the things that this allows us to do that the previous option didn't was to locate the leaching fields out here rather than on this northeastern edge. But the other features of the site are very similar to what we just saw. Also a very similar layout because the kitchen is in a different location. Those remote cafeterias were in a different location. But again, that's something that we would be looking to update in the next iteration of this particular concept. And then finally over at Town Hall, the smallest enrollment on the largest site. So this is a single story pre-KK, all new construction on the Town Hall site. Similar access points. We've got everybody entering and exiting from Glen Road, the emergency vehicle access. The big difference here is we're occupying much less of the site. There's a lot more contiguous green space to the north that could be used to replicate fields. In this case, parent vehicles enter, they make the left-hand turn, and to create a long queue, they circulate in front of the building and then exit back out the way they came. Buses enter, they still turn around and load and unload along the front of the building, but it isn't necessary to take them as deeply into the site. So from this point to this point in this concept, only deliveries and emergency vehicles are accessing the back of the building where we were using that for other circulation in the previous concepts.
Jason, is there a way to preserve any of the ball fields that are in the back in this concept?
There may be. I think what this illustration suggests is that the more likely scenario is that they're actually replicated in the northern portion, right? So if you put a building up front, then you would have to remove some of the wooded area, but at least from a crude perspective, it does look like there might be an opportunity to replicate all four of those fields in that northern portion of the site if a pre-KK only were to go on this property.
Even during construction, the ball fields would likely be used as laydown space and construction area associated with the project, and so they would have to be redone anyway, just due to their proximity to this to the site.
Okay, so let's pause there for a moment. Any questions, comments, additional insights? That represented the full range of options. The only thing we didn't show you a drawing of were the 3 repair only options. And just to remind people why you didn't see drawings of those, a repair only concept simply updates the building for code compliance. It doesn't move any interior walls. It doesn't add space to meet the educational intent. And so they're meant to serve as a baseline. And because they're essentially the existing building, we haven't created and don't typically create new drawings for those. So you've now seen all what is 15 options that are currently under consideration. So with that, anybody have any questions or comments about those? Yeah, Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, thank you for that. Again, very informative, and I appreciate the work that went into that. A lot of due diligence. I appreciate it. Just a comment, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I guess at this point in time, I do have a lot of concerns about the town hall site. So just want to have that noted. But I appreciate the diligence you guys have put into this, no question.
Thanks.
Yeah, I echo Greg's sentiment also. I think it's a lot to overcome.
Other questions, comments, thoughts on obviously what's an awful lot of options, a lot of information to take in. That's certainly not lost upon many of us, but
If there aren't any additional questions, we believe the next agenda item is related to the public forum. And so if it's okay with you, Dr. Brand, we'll just roll right into that.
please, sure. Thanks, Jason.
Can I ask one quick question? As far as the renovation, is that something that the cost, is that something that you will explore if we don't choose anything? So we can have it out to the public?
You mean the repair only options, Marianne?
Yes, yep.
Yes, so we will price out those repair only options to be used as a baseline. And those are also, those will also be useful for the evaluation process, because if, for example, a pre-KK is selected, we would then also be able to utilize those numbers for the repair only of the Woburn Street and the North Intermediate site for voters to understand the full magnitude of addressing the needs of the pre-K5 students. So we'll definitely be having those numbers calculated and estimated and presented.
Thank you.
I have a question, which is that one of the main concerns that people had about both the town hall site and the Wildwood site, especially for the K5 pre-K5 option, is just the level of traffic that the roads can bear in those neighborhoods. And there's kind of no way, like looking at the site designs that you've presented to us, that's not part of that evaluation. It's just kind of lurking out there as an issue. Is that something that we can get a little bit more concrete about when we start doing the decision matrix? Because that certainly is going to be has to be part of the the consideration of the feasibility of these sites.
Yes, definitely. We had the geographer look at travel distance to each site, as well as the time approximately that it would take to travel to each of the sites. And one of the diagrams that he has generated, and we could try to share that for the next meeting potentially, is it shows the route that most people would take from one area to get to each of the sites. And if those were to be overlapped, you would see that almost every student would be taking the same roads to get to certain sites, because there's only one access point for town hall, for example. And so we could work with them to see if we can get some of those images overlap to demonstrate that information. Unfortunately, because of the phase that we're at and we have multiple sites, we haven't done traffic studies. So that is intended for when we have a selected option for a full traffic study to be completed. But in the interim, we can look to have something like that done to help answer that question.
And David, I just add to that another one of the prompts that we may invite the community to respond to is around what those evaluation criteria should be. And so there's a real possibility that one of the criteria could be associated with traffic, and it could be phrased in such a way that it could be something like potential for additional traffic congestion. And then we could evaluate the various options based on the school building committee's sort of sense of what that potential is for congestion. And then we'll just offer one other thing. The other thing that we could do is we could graphically represent what the bus queue and the parent queue might look like in terms of number of vehicles and whether or not they would likely back up onto adjacent roadways. And so if you would find either one of those things useful, we could certainly talk about those for our immediate next steps.
Thanks, Jason.
So another question off of what David just said, as far as traffic and congestion on the road, I have concerns on Glen Road because of how narrow that road is. I'm not even too sure if it could handle buses coming each way at the same time. I mean, I think it's something that needs to be looked at as far as if it could even handle that type of traffic coming in each different way, especially with the buses. I honestly think that road would need to have major work done to accommodate a pre-K through 5 at the town hall. It's just so narrow and windy.
Lee, if you're still on the call, could you comment on what sort of our civil consultants might be able to quickly take a look at related to those kinds of issues?
Yes, thanks, Jason. I think we can provide kind of a cursory look, but part of the problem, Marianne, is just to do a kind of complete traffic study to know exactly what outcomes and what potential offsite improvements would need to be made. Those are fairly expensive to get completed, somewhere in the $20,000 range. So when we're talking about, do we exercise that kind of research on each of the individual sites, and is that a best use of funding for that, or do we wait and see if we can narrow these options down in lieu of that, right? And if that's the one piece that needs final testing before we move forward, then that's where we, utilize the funding to be able to do that final traffic study. Does that help?
It does.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks, Lee. If there are no further questions, so Jason, you were talking about the preparation for the community forum. And again, it's a reminder, and thanks for showing us. Our next community forum, forum number 2, is scheduled for February 1st. Not far off. Jason, I know you and your team have been thinking about this, and we've been talking internally. You want to provide an update for the committee?
Yeah, so our intent here is not to try to present the entirety of that show for next week, but we did want to share sort of a flavor of what we're going to share with the community and how we're going to share with the community, and invite your feedback on those 2 things. This is the basic agenda. We're going to review again the MSBA process. We have a single slide that summarizes the existing conditions. We're going to talk a little bit about visioning and its outcomes. That's what that defining project needs item is. We'll quickly run through all of the options. And then over the course of that presentation, our current intent is to deploy the Mentimeter platform that we've used in visioning to get some real-time feedback on what's being presented, and then having a few specific prompts that we'll share with you in just a few minutes to get some targeted feedback on specific issues.
Jason, can you just, for those that weren't part of the visioning exercise and might not know what the Mentimeter platform is, could you sort of briefly just describe that so folks who didn't participate have a little bit of a sense of what that's about?
Sure. Mentimeter is essentially a digital polling platform. The way it works is the presentation materials are embedded in the platform, and people can access the presentation on their mobile device, on their phone, on their tablet, if they're at their laptop. This is a remote public meeting, so they would use those devices, and there'll be opportunities on each slide to do things like react with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or to post a comment. We can make choices about how much of those reactions and those comments are visible in real time, or we can just simply gather them and respond to them at the conclusion of the presentation. And then in terms of these prompts, what Mentimeter allows is the users to respond, and the results of those kinds of prompts show up automatically. So for example, if we were asking a question about grade configuration, we could decide to show those kinds of results live, and we could see if there's any sort of agreement on any of the particular issues that we're polling. So it's a digital polling platform.
Thanks, Jason.
So we would start with information already covered, introduce the team and yourselves as members of the school building committee. We would remind everyone that this process is done in partnership with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and therefore comes with procedures and expectations. They have a process that we have to follow. It's not necessarily a short process. We're already in the 3rd major step, conducting feasibility study. And if we look at feasibility study and schematic design, there's a couple of key moments, even in this small window, where we're going from the many concepts to the few in this first step. We're going from the few concepts to the one in the second step. And then in the 3rd step, we're really establishing what the look and feel of the one project is, and most importantly, establishing a project budget. Ultimately, that process ends with town funding votes, currently assumed to be in the spring of 2025. In terms of the overall schedule, right here we are today in early 2024. we would expect occupancy of this building to be somewhere in 2028.
2020, 2028, 2029, yep.
I mentioned we have a very high level summary of the existing conditions. Essentially, we've evaluated them. We've determined that they've exceeded their useful life, and a significant project needs to be undertaken to extend their useful life. We had a very successful visioning session, 4 different moments with over 50 participants. We used a number of different strategies, and these were the basic outcomes. So we would share these at a high level from each of the 4 visioning sessions. We would talk about how we continued to meet with the expanded working group to determine the specific needs for each of the grade configurations in terms of their overall square footages, spatial relationships, and then we would get into the design options themselves. You've seen this table a number of times. We just used this slide tonight. What are we really trying to do when we're exploring these options? Where the sites currently are that are under consideration, and sort of what some of the basic features are, alerting to the community, for example, that several of the sites lack full access to utilities. We would walk through the basic features of each one of the 4 sites under consideration. And then we would show each option in a different way than you have seen them to date. Instead of multiple slides per option, we're going to try to stay at a much higher level. So each option, what we're proposing, would only get 1 slide. And yes, there's a lot of information on this slide, but we'd be focusing on the big image. How does the site work? But what's over in the margin, a little note about the construction phasing, right? Again, we wouldn't go through that in detail, but obviously the longer the list, the more complicated the phasing is. Thumbnails of the floor plans, and then a simple diagram related to how much of this particular concept is new construction and how much of it is renovation. So this is a sample of what we're currently thinking for the graphic representation of each option for new construction. And then here's one for addition renovation, right? More words under construction phasing, and orange shows up in the addition renovation diagram. And then we would conclude that with this sort of thumbnail representation of all of the options under consideration in that matrix that we started with, where we've got 2 flavors for each of the grade configuration so that we can sort of see them and remind folks of them all at once. And then the presentation would conclude with the information about how do you find more information, how do you pose questions on the project itself. Questions about that as sort of a general presentation strategy. Anything in there seem objectionable or overwhelming?
Questions?
How long do we have?
What was the question, Christine?
How long do we have for the
You
meeting?
mean in terms of the meeting duration?
Yeah.
I don't think we put a parameter on it. The last one we had was an hour because it was before our building committee meeting. But this one, we don't have any constraints for the Wildwood project before or after. So I don't think we gave it a time limit. Not to say it's open-ended.
Right. I think our hope would be to be as thorough but brief as possible. Certainly don't want to present for an entire hour, but there is a lot of information to get through here, and we also want to leave enough time for questions at the end, and those few feedback mechanisms that I mentioned a moment ago. So related to those, we've got them stashed sort of behind the thank you here. We brought some examples of Mentimeter prompts from the visioning session that may be appropriate for this public meeting. It may be appropriate, for example, to just invite people to share their thoughts on what the vision of this project should be. In the case of the visioning group, consolidation was the word that rose to the top. So that's a potential prompt. Demographic, we wouldn't want anybody to identify themselves so that their responses could be tied to a known individual, but sort of what category do they fall in? That may be a relevant prompt. This is an open-ended question. What ideas or concerns or topics, should the district be taking under consideration? And this is an example of where something could show up in real time if we chose to. In fact, what you're seeing here when it says votes, that's a mechanism in Mentimeter where people can agree with something that's been said by someone else. So we could choose a feature like that if we so desire. Here's a prompt about grade configuration. Right, we're not asking people to rate them or show their favorite. We're just asking how strongly should each of these be considered. It's a way of sort of taking the temperature of the room related to one of these key decisions. Here's one about sites, also phrased from the how strongly should we consider, but things about site features like access to town sewer and natural gas. If we would like to probe town hall a little more, perhaps we could ask particular questions about each one of the 3 grade configurations on that site as a way of taking the temperature for those in attendance about that particular site. So we wanted to share those few examples and see, get some feedback from you on what you thought might be appropriate feedback mechanisms for the community. Anyone have any thoughts about any of that?
Susan has her hand up.
I just had a quick question, and I hear what you're saying. You're trying to figure out what to prompt people to think about. But when I think about sitting here and watching these presentations on the multitude of options, I'm almost thinking about how to help people track what they think about them, because it seems like the slide's going to go by and then you're not going to really remember which one it was that you liked. I mean, we've all been in these meetings for weeks and I'm still like, wait a minute, which one was that? I'm sort of wondering if there's like cheat sheet or a PDF or something to put out there to people to say, hey, here's just a little guideline. You might want to, make a marking on this because here's the 15, or whatever it is, and kind of give them a tool to sort of follow along, because I think it's a lot, that's just my thought on that.
Did you provide all of these documents after and upload them to the website? So I do hear what you're saying. We try and provide to the building committee this presentation in advance. I know some people like to print it. They like to view it ahead of time. It is a moving target though. So there are updates made to the last minute on these. So if you could be patient with the fact that you may send you a presentation that does change slightly, we appreciate that. And then at the end, we can provide you the updated one where people make notes, things like that, off to the side.
Susan, one of the things we could do, obviously this meeting will be, a video of this meeting will be recorded, but we could also position Mentimeter to still be live and active after the meeting is over. And so we can remind people that don't feel like you have any pressure to respond right in this minute. We'll leave this tool up for several days after the meeting, digest it in your own time. We're interested in your feedback. So we want to make sure we give you plenty of time to do that. So that's another resource we have at our disposal if you think that would be useful.
And even if it's if you have questions, call town hall. If you want a copy of the presentation, it's here at this URL, or you know what I mean, whatever it is, to kind of help people have a minute to sit with it if they really want to go back through it after hearing what everyone said. I think that would be an excellent idea to extend the time. I think that would be great.
And we always,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we always have an email address that you can email questions to, and we'll present that on one of the slides at the end to make sure that people know where to find the documents, as Jason showed with a circle on the screen, and also the email address, that in the event that you do not use the Mentimeter platform or ask questions on the chat in Zoom that will go directly to Dr. Brand, that you do have the opportunity to send emails directly to us that we can respond to.
Do people have their hands up? Can we go in the order of Vivian, then Christine, and then Marianne? I think that was the order that you had your hands raised.
Thank you. For the Dora and Whittier team, I know that the original flyer has already been made up and distributed. Is there a possibility to make this a double-sided flyer and maybe include the variations on the backside? It becomes a two-sided flyer and people have that in advance. Do you think that would be worthwhile? And since we're still publicizing this meeting and it could go out and the community could already have both sides in advance of the meeting.
Let us make sure we understand what you're suggesting first. I'm trying to navigate back here. That the reverse side of the slide, of the reverse side of the handout, would look something like this, where it's essentially a thumbnail version of the options.
Correct. And that way if they were so inclined, they could print it out or they could have that at their disposal as you're reviewing them and giving them a little bit more context and depth.
Certainly this graphic exists already. I would invite Julie or Lee to chime in on whether or not we want to release something like that ahead of a meeting like this.
I'm going to jump in and say, I think releasing this ahead of a meeting would cause a lot of confusion unless it's being described. I think after it can be provided, but I think in advance, I think that's challenging, especially for the design team. Walking through this, it's a small snapshot, and to try and zoom in and say, I don't understand, what does orange mean? And I don't think it's a bad idea, Vivian, to provide it. I just don't know that providing it in advance of that community forum is helpful.
Understood. I do see that graphically this will not necessarily print as well, and it might cause a lot more questions than answers.
So after the community forum, or even probably slightly before, we'll be printing new poster boards that will be positioned in I think we have 7 right now, positioned all through the town. And this could be a graphic that is on that poster board for the next iteration.
Excellent.
Christine?
Yeah, coming back to Susan's idea, I think we're definitely going to issue more reminders. So I think it's a great idea to make a PDF of a grid of the options where people can, track their commentary as they're going through it. We can push it out to the Apple just like we did the reminder, things like that. If an email goes out with the presentation, it can accompany the presentation, but we can definitely do something like that. I like that idea, and it's another form of engagement.
Is that something that I'm trying to think of how logistically you would do that? So the meeting is happening, and we are about to embark on the options section of the presentation. A PDF of a graphic like this has been posted to the project website, and we put the link to that graphic in the chat, just as we're about to embark on that topic. Is that the kind of thing that you're describing, Christine?
No, I think really just a table that shows all of the options listed down in the order that you're going to run through them. And then like a set of just an open table or reaction columns or something where they can just take notes as they're going through.
Oh, I see.
And it would also help us, we can put the URL on the bottom of the page, we can put the email address, all the information for them right there in one spot, but they can print it when they see it on the Apple or they get it in the email.
Somewhat like the second side of the flyer be something like this minus the actual images. It just becomes a grid where they can take notes and understand.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree that we need something on the backside of the flyer. Maybe if it's possible, Jason or Julie and Ronnie, is instead of like where you see these images have the different variations of the color to represent the various you know, grade configuration or public open spaces or common spaces. If it's just even a like just a high level of it.
I think you could even use this, Vivian, take out all the images, leave empty boxes with lines in them so that people can make notes as they're.
That's fine too.
Yeah, I think that we could do that.
Yeah, something to that nature where people, it's a second side of it so that they understand what are some of the options and have a place to reference back and take notes if needed.
Before I get to Marianne, I just have a quick question for Glenn. Glenn, are these being printed and sent home with students? Or are these just digital that Tracy's emailing to the community?
The flyers,
Yeah.
they are being sent out digitally. And we, all of the schools, they were sent to the revised version with some language that we talked about the other day with Vivian. That has been already completed and sent out. And my request to all school principals is to include it in their weekly newsletter.
So thank you. My thought is there is no actual printing, Vivian, and sending out to the students. So we could have Doran Ridier create the original one that you modified the other day and have a second page with this. Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, and they could print it out on their own. Sure. And for the small group, the subset group that I'm thinking of that I will be printing is to the preschool communities, the preschool schools that are in Wilmington. We'd be doing a printed version of that and handing it out to the preschools themselves to be able to put it into the knapsacks or whatever for the preschool students to take home. Those parents that don't get the electronic version, since they're not in the kindergarten or elementary grade levels yet.
Marianne?
Yeah, just go back to Doran Whittier's last slide on their presentation to the community forum. If I feel that we should stay away from naming any sort of site. I know they had town hall there 3 times for pre-K. I just think we just stay away from kind of naming anything. I know it's in its infancy stage, but if we're not asking about any other sites, I think we should eliminate that kind of question.
Fair
How are we
enough.
going to get people to think about the consequences of each of these sites as we progress through the process, though?
Right, but you're only naming one site. I would think.
Was this
I
going to
just
be
hate to single out one site. If you're going to do it, then do it for all sites.
I was under the impression these questions were the questions isolated only for the town hall site, and that's why they were town hall site specific. Was I incorrect in that assumption?
Yeah, not all of the prompts, Susan, are meant to be for town hall specifically.
Mm-hmm.
This particular set of prompts was an attempt to get the feedback specifically about the town hall site, because of the sites under consideration, it's the only one that's controversial.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and the citizens may want to express an opinion about.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, Jason, the only one that it's the only one that the MSBA has not already included. So we've already included as part of our parameters, the Wildwood, Woburn Street and North Intermediate. And this one was in addition to that. So we are tasked with reviewing all three of the other sites. This one was in addition.
And certainly we would be willing to entertain other ways of garnering feedback specifically about the town hall sites. If anyone has any suggestions about that, that's exactly the kind of feedback that we're looking for.
I think Susan, you were next, and then David.
Yeah, just quickly to reiterate to Christine and Vivian, my thought on this was really that this was a user-friendly PDF that goes out via email, share it with your friends. It really wasn't meant for Jason or somebody to walk through. It was just to say there's a tool out here that might help you follow along and make sure that they know where to find it and put it out in the mom's chats and dad's chats and whatever.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of printing for the pre-Ks, you know, we have a limited budget. So having to print and expense that to the project. I don't think, Glenn, the intention was to send that to the pre-Ks in a printed copy. I believe they all went electronically as well to the pre-Ks. Am I right?
To the pre-Ks that we have registered in the district, yes.
Mhm.
I was thinking of it only as electronic, Julie, is all I was trying to say. I wasn't thinking of it as paper, but not to say.
No, I hear you. Vivian mentioned printing them. That's why I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. It was never intended to be a printed document. It was always intended to be an electronic document. Most of, I think, the things that the town or the school system sends out now are electronic. Glenn does his newsletter. So.
Yeah, Dave.
I want to offer just some quick feedback on the questions we were just looking at a moment ago, which is that I think that asking a question like, to what extent should the town consider, you know, whether town sewer is available at the site, is difficult to answer or really think about unless you understand what the different trade-offs are involved at the various sites. I mean, other things being equal, sure, it's great to have town sewer, and you know the north is the only one of the sites, like other town hall has it, but of the school sites the north is the only one that has it. But until you see what the septic options and where we would have to put the leaching fields, you don't really know how to evaluate that question, because maybe it's perfectly fine. It's like, well, we can do a septic, but you can't answer a question like that until you've seen some more information to understand, you know, what the trade-offs are on each site. So I think we need to be a little bit careful about asking questions that can't be answered in the abstract.
Yeah, that was my point too. I just don't think we get into the nitty-gritty of the sites as much with those questions.
Okay. Would it be more appropriate to ask a question like, what criteria should the school building committee use to evaluate these options? It's sort of an open-ended question rather than something that's more targeted, like what we were just looking at a moment ago.
It's an interesting question, if I could, because, you know, again, coming back full circle to what has been referenced a few times here, and that is soon enough, this committee will be asked to do that very thing and go through the exercise of a matrix to evaluate the myriad of options. So I don't know how that's framed, but something along those lines, I think actually certainly would, I think, demonstrate for those tuning in to the community that this committee, and we are highly interested in thoughts and feedback. I mean, we're not just going through this to go through the process of the motions here. So if we can, in terms of how we could frame such a question, but I think that could be good.
I agree. Susan?
And while I know you want feedback, and I understand the value of feedback, absolutely, there's a reason there's a committee and people have sat through multiple meetings to get educated on all of these things. And I think that's where guidance comes in from us to be able to guide them toward decisions that they should be looking at, or flags that they should be looking at on an area. I mean, I think that's doing our due diligence and what we were assigned to the committee to do. So I'm not really afraid of, giving an open-ended question like as you suggested, what would you like us to, how would you like us to decide this? I mean, I think that, we're put here to get the best product for the lowest price in the most effective way. Like you could pick, oh, well, we want something to fit on the site perfectly, or you want, a perfect scenario with the utilities and that are needed. But at the same time, if it's an astronomical cost, no one wants that. So I think it's really, the onus is on the committee to sort of figure out where we're driving to put the proper information out there. And I believe that the committee has the knowledge to do that after spending this amount of time. So I don't love the open-ended questions. I kind of like the guidance from experts that we're paying to get us there. So that's just my feeling.
Thanks, Susan. David?
Actually, I was going along with you, Susan, until you got to the very end, and then I suddenly realized, wait, I think this points a totally different way. I like the idea of the open-ended questions, because to me, the essence of getting community feedback is to get information that you don't necessarily already have, and that there's benefit to not trying to guide them into like a particular area that we've already sort of decided that these are the key questions and now we want your opinion on those. I want to make sure that there's not some aspect of it that we're not sufficiently considering. And so I think that having, keeping it open-ended so that they can provide us with whatever kinds of feedback and thoughts that they have about the program, I think that's where the real value is from the community forum.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
I think to those 2 points, Jason, would you mind sharing the slide deck again? There was one slide I liked that showed the pre-K versus pre-K 5, weighing how much you would like it. I think that feedback is good for us. And then, David, to your point, the slide just prior to that shows the word scale. Because the word is larger based on the amount of people that picked it. That might get the kind of feedback you're thinking of. So we know the more people that said it, the larger it shows up. So to me, those two, this one and the slide after, the two kind of feedback, I think that would be helpful for us.
How do others feel about that as a targeted input strategy? Those two prompts in particular.
I like that, because at the end, ultimately, that's what the feedback we want, to be able to make a informed decision as a committee.
Yeah, I think the gray configuration is very important.
And
I really like that suggestion as well.
When we've done this in the past, right, we articulate all of the important things, right? This is not a vote, right? It's not, the outcomes of this are non-binding, those kinds of things. We're just sort of taking the temperature of those in attendance at the meeting. And then I would explain sort of what the graphic is as it's showing up in real time. I think we may have done that before, but just to remind folks, there's 3 really great examples here. The pre-K only response, because there's a lot of light blue behind the dot. That means there was a lot of agreement on that end of the spectrum. The pre-K 5, similar result, a lot of agreement. It happens to be on the other end of the spectrum. But the one in the middle, the average is in the middle, but because you see the red bar is essentially uniform across the entire spectrum, that means that there was no agreement at all, that there was relatively equal responses all along the spectrum. There wasn't a concentration of response. So we can articulate, how to read, the graphic, even though it's showing up in real time. And sometimes participants find that helpful.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, do you think from the standpoint of your team, Jason, you have enough kind of go on and thinking, and Julie, for putting a framework around the community forum? Has this been helpful?
Yes, tremendously helpful. And I think we have clear direction on both the content and the feedback mechanism.
Okay. Great, thanks, and thanks for everyone's thoughts. Moving through the agenda, I know it is getting late. Next steps, I'm not, Julie, is there anything specific that we needed to touch upon here?
Yeah,
Yes.
Jason, can you throw up that PowerPoint again? Because you have the slide with the schedule, upcoming schedule.
This takes care of number 6 and 7, essentially next step schedule update.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our next steps, I think it's the one before this, Jason.
So we actually combined the two
Oh.
slides that you saw, Julie. So what we've done is to include, what the key steps are in each, as well as the meetings that come in each month. So I could run through it real quick if you want. So next week, obviously, we have the community forum. We will be working to establish the evaluation matrix. That's that kind of red, yellow, green diagram that we shared at the last meeting, and it will have a lot of criteria to evaluate each option, and more or less we'll be scoring them against each other to see which ones are more favored than other options. We will start reviewing that at the February 7th meeting. Also in mid-February, we'll send out information to the cost estimator so that they can start estimating each of the options. Those estimates are on a high level based on the amount of detail that's been developed so far. In March, we'll continue evaluating the options while we're waiting for the cost to arrive at the March 6th meeting. And then we will start to shortlist those options without cost because we won't have the cost back at the March 6th meeting. We are looking to add a meeting in March so that we can share the cost with this group prior to a community forum where we could share the cost and the evaluation matrix and the results of that and the shortlist at a community forum towards the end of March. And very quickly, April will approach and we will be looking to provide the actual submission that we will be sending to the MSBA, a draft of that for review and approval so that we can actually submit that to the MSBA.
Vivian?
Ronnie, can you please help me understand for the March? I know there's a lot of work to be done. For the March 6th SBC, what will we be reviewing if the cost estimates have not been returned?
Sure. So in February, we're going to look at the evaluation criteria matrix and confirm all of the criteria that we're going to be listing and using to rank each of the options. Mm-hmm. And then at the first March meeting, we'll be looking to really fill all of those in as a group, but we won't have the cost back yet. And so we'll be looking at all the other criteria because there will be quite a few. And because of the number of options that we have, it will potentially span over the 2 meetings. We could potentially start that in February, but in the reality, we'll need 2 meetings to really review all of those options against each of the criteria considerations. And then once we have the cost completed, then we'll be able to share that, which would in reality be in a second meeting in March.
And is it during the second meeting in March where we start eliminating some of the options and honing it more in?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure so that, if people, that the second date that we select that hasn't been confirmed yet for the March meeting is a crucial date for attendance.
And just so you know, we have scheduled that for March 20th. That date has been reviewed with Glenn's office to make sure that there were no major conflicts with other boards at this time. So that is the date that we have chosen. And then we are still up in the air on our community forum number 3. Ronnie, I think we were looking at the following week after that meeting. So whether it's the 26th, 27th, 28th, we were looking in that time frame. It's important for us to be able to show the community the work that we've done to get where we're going so that we can submit our PDP in April of 2024.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. It's Julie. Moving on, I think we're good, right, Julie, to move on?
Yeah, yeah.
Working group, no, item number 8 on tonight's agenda, working group updates. Is there anything to report from our public relations working group?
Yes, thank you. For the SBC Public Relations Working Group, we had met after our last school building committee meeting and had some great ideas and brainstormed of how to get the communication out. I also did have the opportunity to work alongside the PAWS group, the parent advocacy group here in town that has a tremendous following and does a great deal of public relations themselves to the school population and the school community. And they also will be participating and assisting in getting the word out about the upcoming community forum. And that's where they will make the distribution of printed flyers. The school will, Dr. Glenn and his group will send it out electronically. They will take that electronic format, print it out, and distribute it to the preschools in the Wilmington community in hopes of garnering some of those parents' participation as well. That's all for this month.
So if I could jump in, and I know that you guys are probably racking your brains, but we need to try to figure out how to get outside of the school community. I'm sure people in the business has heard about the Whittier Vocational School. That was soundly defeated.
Yep.
Wasn't even close.
I
That
think
makes me extremely nervous. I think we really need to come up with a game plan on engaging the other 15,000 residents in town. You know, about 5,000 maybe parent or caregivers, but 15,000 is the community at large, and they're our voting community also. I've been trying to rack my brain to come up with any sort of idea to try to reach that, but
Marianne, I hear you loud and clear. I think that has been the sentiment I've been echoing since the very start of this school building committee. It is one that, you know, as I've said before, the middle school and the high school is one that the entire community at large comes out to vote, because all of the students go through the middle school and the high school. Whereas the elementary schools are a little bit different, that only a small grouping goes to each elementary school, and getting the parents to be interested in an elementary school that is not their child's current is a little bit difficult. So I have been with the public relations working group, we have been looking at different ways of how can we get more community pages and you know, outreach more using social media. But beyond that, we have been also working with the PAWS group to help further our communication to the group.
yeah, I understand the PAWS group, but they're more of a concentrated within the school. They're not really outreach to the general public.
Agreed.
So
we
no.
are planning on doing, I had made a recommendation earlier this week that maybe we host 2 public community forums, one that is virtual and one that is in person. And maybe each of those could be done at either the senior center or other areas where the public kind of gathers that isn't specifically geared towards students or teachers or, you know, families that are with kids. And it is one that it's a work in progress, and it will be a challenge.
Have you reached out to, oh, I can't think of the name, the business community? Maybe ask if we can put flyers on the counter on some of the takeout places, something to that nature.
We can do
the
that.
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, sure.
Yep.
That's a great suggestion, and I'll look into that and maybe even take a drive over the weekend and post some flyers on all of the windows.
Yeah, just a thought, people
Yeah. No,
don't take
absolutely.
out that kind of, it at least will get the people who don't have school-age children talking about it.
Absolutely. We also did mention, I think David was the one that suggested putting a flyer into the water bill.
Yes, that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we need to work with town hall to know exactly when the water bills go out. It's not on our current calendar in terms of radar, but they go out quarterly. So
I think
we
I
need
think
to
it's
get
actually the tax bill that the town
bill.
topics newsletter goes out quarterly with the tax bill, the residential property tax bills.
Okay.
Yeah, but we
It just
don't,
don't go out as frequently enough to be able to meet kind of the timing of these public forums. But definitely we'll reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and see how we can utilize some of the local businesses in helping communicate the messaging and as well as the events.
yeah, and just not so much going out with the tax bills. You needed to go out with the water bills. Everybody opens their water bills and looks at the water bills. No one
That's true,
really
Marianne.
looks at their tax bills because that's paid usually with their mortgage. But
Agreed.
everybody will read their
Water
bills.
Yeah, we can work with Susan and her office in town hall and find out that schedule, and we can work with them. So great
Right.
idea. Is there any particular in Wilmington, how do I say this, a local watering hole that pretty much everybody comes to?
And there's a few restaurants that
Right.
are neighborhood favorites in town, local favorites, but I don't know if there's one in particular that's.
I think a lot of the population at one point or another goes to Massimo's. That might be a good place, Vivian.
Yeah,
See
that's
if
where I was thinking, as well as the Tremezzo's Pizza,
yes,
Rosie's Bakery, and Red Heat.
he's a real steward for the community, so I think he'd be willing to help.
Absolutely, and Code One as well. These are all just the places I frequent, so I'm kind of mentioning those. And I'll look to see and maybe take a drive around the neighborhood and just ask them to post the flyers.
And everyone shops at Market Basket. Maybe we can do something.
Absolutely, Market Basket too, and CVS, all of those, the True Value, all of them up and down in that same shopping center. But I hear you, and I appreciate your comments, Marianne. And yes, you're right. The Whittier one, I think it was only Haverhill that voted to approve, and they were the ones sending the smallest number of students to the Voc Tech. So unfortunately, it didn't pass. It's a big fear.
It is a big fear, and a lot of the feedback of people coming out of the voting booth. One of the news channels interviewed some people, and they said it was lack of communication. Now, who knows if they just weren't engaged in what was going on, or it was a poor communication. I just don't know. But that was
Marianne,
concerning.
I think the number is you have to hear something 7 times before you remember it.
So
true.
true. So true.
True. Very true.
David, you had your hand raised. I saw, but are you all set or?
I was actually just going to throw out also, just like, has anyone reached out to the town crier? And because that whether for just offering people that they could talk to about articles, or even just, we could obviously you can always write a letter to the editor, but it might be something that we could set up one of their reporters to speak with some of the leadership of this committee, and perhaps get some press there.
Yeah, and to also the Lowell Sun.
Yeah, we need more participation in the public relations working group. The group is extremely small at the moment. So anyone that's willing to participate is more than welcome, and we welcome you with open arms.
Okay, thanks, Vivian. The second item in the working group updates is out of the sustainability working group.
Sure. Jason, if you could just advance to the next slide. Thank you. So, the sustainability working group met with our sustainability consultant, the green engineer, and our mechanical consultants, GGD, earlier this week. We reviewed the minimum MSBA requirements that any project has to undertake, and also reviewed like the additional reimbursement opportunities, and then we looked at the kind of pathway to achieving a minimum of 50 points for LEED Silver, which is the minimum requirement for MSBA projects now. And so what you're seeing on the screen is the draft scorecard that was put together by the green engineer. And for those not familiar with the LEED scorecard, it's more or less our roadmap that we keep going back to during the design process to confirm that we're on course to meet the points that we're targeting to achieve LEED Silver. So you'll see, there's categories listed, and the 3 columns to the left are a yes, a maybe, and a no column. And so right now we are showing checks for locations of where we think that we can achieve the points, and those calculate to equal within the silver category. And then there's several maybes, because as we go through the design process, we might realize that there are certain targets that are not achievable at certain sites or with certain designs. And so they might move into the no category, and other line items might be targeted then to move into the maybe and yes column. So this is something that we'll revisit frequently as we're going through the design process. You'll see that there were a few line items that were highlighted in yellow, and those are ones that we kind of discussed a little bit in more detail during the meeting, because they have a range of points that you can achieve. And the second one on there is about the optimized energy performance. And we highlighted this because there's going to be an update to LEED version 4, which is what we are in right now. And that will increase the thresholds to meet that credit. Jason, if you could advance to the next slide. So this just gives you an example of a recent project that, with this optimized energy performance, it was going to result in 15 LEED points. And when you're trying to reach 50 points to reach silver, 15 is a lot of points. And so that project was able to achieve 15 LEED points. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that if after March 1st and the update that happens with LEED, those same improvements and percentage of improvement that earned 15 points prior to March 1st will now only receive 8 points. So that's a pretty significant number of points when you're calculating this and trying to achieve LEED certification for any project. And so because of that, we are recommending that Wilmington consider registering this project prior to March 1st. Typically, we wouldn't do that at this phase because we don't have a specific site. But that being said, all 3 sites are within the same zip code. And so after checking with our consultant, as long as all 3 sites are within the same zip code, we can register. And that would give us an advantage of having the potential of the 15 points versus the 8 points later on. So we've reviewed that with the sustainability working group, and we are here today to ask this group if they are in agreement with that, and if we should actually move forward, because there is paperwork that we do need to prepare over the next couple of weeks to register the project. So we would want to find out ideally today that we can or cannot register this project for LEED. And if anybody in the sustainability group wants to pipe in here, that would be great too.
Ronnie, you want to let them know how much the cost is for registering?
Oh, sure. Sure. Important piece of information. So the cost is $1,350 to register a project for LEED. So
Michael?
Mike?
Sure. Thank you, Ronnie. Having been part of the working group meeting the other day, I guess I did want to speak to this, and also am a lead professional myself. There's nothing we can do on this project construction-wise that will get us those points or anywhere close to $1,300. So it should be less of a question of if we approve this and more when, do we need to get this on the agenda for our very next meeting? And can we, ask any questions now so that this could be voted on and approved one time?
So, Michael, to answer that question, I think we actually need to vote on this tonight to move this forward. And all we're looking to do is register the project for that amount. We're not looking to make any decisions on what is going to be in the project. We're just looking to register it so that we make that deadline so that we are able to get these additional 7 points once we're further on down the line. Vivian, I think you had your hand next.
Craig can go first.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Just wanted to raise the point that we're going to have to register to get into the lead system at some point anyway. So there's no reason to not do it now. And as Mike said, we're going to be saving or gaining extra points. So again, just want to push everyone that we have to enroll into this program anyway. We might as well do it now.
Thanks, Craig. Vivian?
I echo that same sentiment. I prefer to do it before the March 1st and go under the current ruling of 15 points.
Motion?
I can make a motion to approve. I don't know how to word this. Approve Dorian Whittier to register this project under the current lead accreditation and approve the funding for it.
Second.
I'll take a roll call. Paul?
Yes.
Greg? Mr. Bendel? Okay. Kate?
Yes.
Stacy?
Stacy had to leave the meeting.
Okay. Christine Holloran?
Yes.
Susan Inman?
Yes.
David Ragsdale?
Point of order, do we need to have an amount of money attached to this?
I think they did mention the amount. It was 1,400.
1,350.
Okay, so
1,350.
all right, so in sort of incorporating that into the motion, then yes.
Marianne?
So I think you need to amend the motion, right? To include the dollar amount?
Yes, Vivian, can you amend that motion, please?
Sure. I move to authorize Dorian Whittier to register this project prior to March 1st with a fee of 1,350 in doing so.
Second.
Is that an adequate motion?
Yes.
Okay, so
You were
I'll,
the first, Craig was the second, and now you gotta
And
do a
I'll-
roll call.
sure, I'll start the roll call again. Paul?
Yes.
Greg was not there.
Yes.
Thank you. Kate?
Yes.
Stacy had to leave. Christine?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Marianne?
One question, where are we getting the money from? Do we have it in the
money-
budget?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Thank you,
Motion
Vivian.
passes.
Thank you, everyone. Item number 9, discussion and correspondence, new items tonight. One thing that I will mention, and just to clarify, going back to the community forum, that again is scheduled for February 1st. It is not necessary, everyone in this committee is more than welcome to attend, but you are not, you don't need to attend. We do not need a quorum for that presentation. That's largely going to be driven by, our design team, Doran Whittier, our OPM, myself as the chair, but I just wanted to make sure that that was clear for folks. I know you're all giving a lot of time right now for this committee and this work. That said, we will have that as a recording, and so of course, I'll make sure that you get a copy of that or a link to that recording, as I'm sure at some point you'd be interested in watching what transpires there. If there's nothing else further discussion, new items, we'll go to committee questions, item number 10 tonight. Seeing none, public comments. Is there anyone from the public here this evening who wish to make a comment? Okay. We have an active time period that we're in. Beyond the forum, the next meeting that's scheduled for this committee is February 7th. And we will make sure that we get the agenda and meeting materials out to you. With that, thank you so very much for all of your time. Doran Whittier, thank you for taking us through your work and providing us with a window in terms of the developments that's taking place with this project. And with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call. Paul,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Thank
Night,
you.
everyone.
Good, everyone. Thank you.